There's a lot to be said. And before we go to our first guest, Rania, I just, maybe even to sort of frame some of this discussion about where we are, because of course, here in the United States, as I'm sure you've seen, you're there in Beirut, Lebanon. This is, a very one-sided presentation of what's taking place here. You would, essentially erasing the entire history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But, one number I want to give to people that I think helps frame this, and maybe get some of your thoughts on this, Rania, then we'll go to our first guest. From 2008 to 2003, the number of Palestinians who were both killed and injured by Israelis stands at 158,967 people. Israelis, 6,615 people. So I say that to say that you can see the, very lopsided nature of this conflict and the brutality meted out against Palestinians. And I think, Rania, partially what's eliciting so much shock in this moment, especially here in the United States, so much anger from supporters of Israel, is the fact that the Palestinians, for once, have hit back with something like commensurate force. And for maybe one of the first times in the conflict, there's not a totally lopsided toll in terms of those who are being killed and injured. And I think the fact that Palestinians have stood up so boldly in ways that I think, many of those who are against them and supporting the apartheid system thought was not possible, is partially what's driving a lot of the shock and the outrage here, and setting the tone. But I think a lot of that history has been totally lost, and people are forgetting the long toll that Palestinians have been under for almost 80 years.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct, and I watch obviously from afar the way the reactions in the West are playing out versus what I'm seeing in the region that I am in right now, and it's much, much different because, this is the first time people see Israel looking weak and facing the consequences. Not the first time, but it's an unprecedented moment where Israel's facing the sort of like bigger magnitude of the consequences that are completely predictable from a 75-year long colonial occupation. You you colonize, you steal people's land, you attack them, you ethnically cleanse them, you push them into small concentration camps, you cut them off and besiege them, on and on. You subject them to a system of segregation and apartheid, and you surround them with electrified fences and control every aspect of their movement and how much food they're allowed to access and where they can work and what they can do and who they can see and where they can travel. And like, this is not something that you're going to get a nice reaction from. People are going to react angrily and violently to a system of violence that what you saw this past weekend did not even compare. And I hate to break the brains of people in the West that put these crazy standards on how the oppressed are supposed to behave, but many people across this region, and I would even argue, I'm sure many people across the global South, see what happened this past weekend, and they see it. People in the West can disagree with it, but they see it as legitimate armed resistance that they were, that they thought was courageous, and they're proud to see because you have people who've been stomped on and they hit back at their oppressors. But that's just what happens. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about the history of that, beyond just Palestine.
And the news coming through now that Gaza's only power plant, it looks like it is shutting down. It's running out of fuel, which is going to create an even bigger humanitarian crisis, especially for hospitals there in the Gaza Strip. And this is of course one of the biggest issues. You've got people on dialysis, you've got children, you've got others, and just to also update people on a number that I mentioned before, Rania, and then we'll go to our next piece here. We were talking before, 326 children killed in the Gaza Strip from this bombing. And I wish I could say that was, not something that you would expect. But one number that I think other people should also know about the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, from 2000 to 2023, nearly 2,300 Palestinian children were killed. So that means that on average, about 100 Palestinian children killed every year for 23 years from 2000 to 2023. So I think people need to keep that in mind, when we're thinking about how this is being framed. But speaking of medical care, I know, Rania, earlier today, you were able to speak with Dr. Medhat Abbas, who's the Director General of Gaza's Health Ministry. We had to pre-record because of the challenges there with power and other electricity and other issues happening there. But we do have an interview that Rania was able to do earlier today with Dr. Medhat Abbas, the Director General of Gaza's Health Ministry.
I'm incredibly pleased to be joined by Dr. Madhat Abbas. He is the Director General of Gaza's Health Ministry. Dr. Abbas, welcome to the Freedom Side.
You must welcome. You must welcome.
So we are speaking to you. You're in Gaza right now. The situation is very dire. We're hearing the hospitals are running out of fuel as the Israelis have cut off fuel and access as well to medicine and food. Can you update us on the casualty count in Gaza as it stands right now, as well as the situation you're dealing with across the Gaza Strip?
Well, 5,300 are injured, and those 1,100 killed within those 5 days of the crisis. As you mentioned, the Israelis declared that they decided to cut the electricity from the first day. So we were relying on the only power plant of Gaza Strip, which has stopped today. So right now we have no electricity at all.
Wow.
We are relying on standby generators in our hospitals, and the fuel that we have today in the hospitals is enough only to run those hospitals for 2 days, not more. So now the borders are sealed, so we cannot buy any fuel by all the means because the borders are sealed. They have not only closed for the fuel, but nothing is getting inside Gaza. This is including also potable water. They shut the water, and also we do not have access for food. They are not allowing food to come into Gaza. The only solution today for this crisis is to open a humanitarian corridor for the patients to go outside to be treated and for the health professionals from outside to come and extend a helping hand to our colleagues in the hospitals. The other problem that we have today is the 300,000 uh, 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 displaced persons coming from those whose houses are bombarded or were under heavy strikes. So they were forced to leave their homes, and they are now in schools considered as shelters. But of course, the capacity of those schools was to handle only 120,000. Today they have three times their original number. So the UN declares that they cannot handle this number anymore without having additional resources. Resources, of course, nothing can get inside Gaza. Well, the other problem is that attacking the health facilities by the Israelis. In fact, they have attacked Nasser Hospital. They attacked one of the ambulance, the premises of Nasser Hospital, which is based in Khan Yunis city, southern provinces of the Gaza Strip. And also they have attacked the Indonesia hospital, and they have also stopped the services provided in Beit Hanun city because they have annihilated most of the city quarters. And now this hospital is out of service. Let me say that 20 ambulances were directly attacked during this war, and many of my colleagues were killed, unfortunately. So the situation, there's no safe place in Gaza Strip for the people to stay in. The civilians, of course, who are under fire along the hour. In fact, we have the warplanes in our skies 24 hours a day. And of course, they are chilling sometimes randomly. Sometimes they threaten the people to evacuate and sometimes not. You may find the people killed while they are inside their houses. And of course, under the rebels, you try to evacuate or to save those who are under the rebels. But we do not have enough equipment for the civil defense people. So the people go try to save the victims by their bare hands. I think the situation is very miserable, and without having this humanitarian corridor opened at once, I think the health system for sure will collapse, as we have no extra beds now to treat patients, and the patients are lying on the wounded are lying on the corridors of the emergency hospitals in most of the emergency departments in Gaza.